The institution of slavery fought itself for independence during the American Revolution. As Americans started to talk about individual rights and freedom, the amount of slaves began to decrease. With the Declaration of Independence indicating many natural rights, the Constitutional Convention was the political compromise of all states. With the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Revolution of 1800, slavery should survive through all those big occurrences. The Declaration of Independence was a statement adopted by the Conventional Congress that announced the 13 colonies as independent states instead of being owned by the British power. With the help of Declaration, it was used to justify the independence of the United States by listing colonial grievances against King George III by emphasizing their natural rights. Before the American Revolution, the plan was to abolish slavery, but the king overturned the laws, encouraging Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. Ironically, most of the slave owners opposed the slave trade while supporting slavery. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and he owned slaves his whole life. His debts were paid off when he died. Jefferson believed that it was the responsibility of the state and society to free all slaves. This made a significant impact on his legacy. Although he probably didn't want to, he couldn't free them until he paid all of his debts. Jefferson wrote a paragraph on slavery in a rough copy of the Declaration of Independence, but it got deleted before the published copy. He tried to fight against all sorts of legislatures to stop slavery, but it was almost impossible. As he was a member of the House of Burgesses, he proposed to emancipate all slaves in Virginia, but at the end, he was unsuccessful. The Declaration was written to show that the states can be independent, and the citizens can have freedom and individual rights. The Constitutional Convention was written in 1787 in Pennsylvania, and it was the product of a political compromise after long debates over states' rights, representation, and slavery. Slaves were counted 1/5 of the population in American colonies, and they made up 40% of the population. There were conflicts between the North and South because several states in the South refused to join the Union as slavery was not allowed. Delegates from states with large population of slaves would argue that slaves should be considered as people in determining representation in Congress. The government would levy taxes on the states, based on the population. On the other hand, states with almost or no slaves would argue that slaves should not be included in taxation and not in determining representation. The Constitution was concerned with limiting the power of the government and securing the freedom of the citizens. During the Constitutional Convention, individual liberty is supposed to allow a balance between authority and liberty as it's the central purpose of American constitutional law. To help determine the representation of slaves, they created the 3/5 Compromise. Since the North and South differences over the view of slavery, they had to do something about it. Slavery was not approved of or outlawed, but it was a diverse issue and could kill the Union. The North didn't want slaves to be counted as a whole person, because it would be their disadvantage. that the South had way more slaves than they do. To compromise with the situation, they agreed that each 5 slaves would be counted as 3 people. If slaves weren't counted as 3/5, the Southern states would have gained more legislative power. The Northern states thought the legislative power distribution was equal with 3/5 compromise. The election of 1800 was known as the Revolution of 1800. Thomas Jefferson was elected as president this year. He was elected because of the 3/5 clause. Accommodation in the Constitution of slavery, such as the 3/5 clause, led to the great Southern power in Congress. Jefferson's Democratic Republicans defeated the Federalist Party, and that also caused him to win the election. This was the first peaceful transfer of federal executive power. The Revolution of 1800 embeds slavery in American society. As Jefferson starts to expand westward, he takes slavery with him. Therefore, slavery won't be solved until the Civil War. As slavery never got resolved during American Revolution, individual rights and freedom increased. With the Declaration of Independence, the Constitutional Convention, and the election of 1800, slavery would still survive.